As I approached the dilapidated mansion perched ominously on the hill, a chill ran down my spine. This was not just any ordinary property. This was Blackwood Manor, a place whispered about in hushed tones and rumored to be cursed. Tasked with evaluating and selling the estate, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to walk into a nightmare. Little did I know, this assignment would plunge me into a spine-chilling ordeal filled with vengeful spirits, tragic love, and supernatural horrors. My name is Ryan, and I work as a real estate broker. It all started when I was given the task of selling Blackwood Manor, an old and sprawling mansion that had been abandoned for years. As I made my way through the misty woods leading to the property, the grandeur of the manor became evident, despite its state of decay. The overgrown garden, the creaking gates, and the ominous silence added to the eerie atmosphere. Upon entering the mansion, I was struck by its haunting beauty. The vast, empty halls echoed with my footsteps. Dust covered the once opulent furniture, and cobwebs hung like curtains in the corners. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding. As I explored the rooms, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was in the library that I found the diary. Hidden behind a stack of old books, the leather-bound journal looked ancient. Curiosity got the better of me, and I started reading. The diary belonged to Mary, a young piano teacher who had lived in the manor years ago. Her entries spoke of a blossoming romance with her student Edward, but also hinted at something dark and sinister lurking within the house. Mary's words painted a vivid picture of a young woman in love, but they also conveyed a growing sense of dread. She mentioned strange occurrences, like the feeling of being watched and hearing whispers in the night. The diary abruptly ended with a blood-curdling entry about an attack by a malevolent spirit. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved deeper into the history of Blackwood Manor. It turned out that Mary had been brutally murdered by the manor's caretaker, who had been possessed by an evil spirit. Edward, devastated by her death, had taken his own life. The spirits of both Mary and Edward were said to haunt the mansion, trapped in an endless cycle of torment. As I continued my investigation, I began experiencing the supernatural occurrences Mary had described. Whispers echoed through the halls, and I felt cold spots in certain areas of the house. One night, as I was reading in the library, I saw a figure in the corner of my eye. Turning around, I found nothing but shadows. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. It was during one of these unsettling nights that I encountered Mary's spirit for the first time. I was drawn to the sound of a piano playing softly in the distance. Following the music, I reached the grand ballroom, where an old, dust-covered piano stood. As I approached, the music stopped abruptly, and I saw her, a translucent figure of a woman in a white dress, her eyes filled with sorrow. Mary's spirit seemed to be trying to communicate with me. Through a series of eerie and surreal experiences, she revealed the horror she had endured. She showed me visions of her life, her love for Edward, and the gruesome night of her murder. The pain and anguish in her eyes were heart-wrenching. As I spent more time in the mansion, I felt a growing connection to Mary and an intense desire to help her find peace. However, the malevolent spirit that had possessed the caretaker seemed determined to keep Mary's soul trapped. One night, as I was deep in thought, I suddenly felt an icy hand grip my shoulder. I turned around to see a grotesque figure with hollow eyes staring back at me. The spirit's malevolence was palpable, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The spirit tried to possess me, just as it had possessed the caretaker years ago. I struggled to resist, but the darkness was overwhelming. Just when I thought I would succumb, Mary's spirit appeared and intervened. Her presence gave me the strength to fight off the evil force. Realizing that the only way to free Mary and Edward's spirits was to confront the malevolent entity, I prepared for a final showdown. With the help of an old family priest who knew about the manor's dark history, I performed a ritual to banish the spirit. The night was filled with terrifying manifestations as the spirit fought back with all its might. The manor seemed to come alive with supernatural activity. Objects flew across the room, and the walls shook violently. But with Mary and Edward's spirits by my side, I pressed on. The ritual reached its climax, and with a final incantation, the malevolent spirit was expelled from the manor in a blinding flash of light. With the spirit banished, the manor fell silent. Mary and Edward's spirits, now free, appeared one last time to thank me. The sorrow in their eyes was replaced with a sense of peace. As dawn broke, their spirits faded away, leaving me alone in the empty mansion. I left Blackwood Manor with a heavy heart, but also with a sense of fulfillment. The experience had changed me profoundly. I had faced unimaginable horrors, but I had also helped two lost souls find peace. The mansion, now free of its curse, stood as a testament to the enduring power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. The tale of Blackwood Manor is a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the most beautiful facades. It is a story of love, tragedy, and the relentless battle between good and evil. As I drove away from the manor, I couldn't help but look back one last time. The memories of the horrors and the spirits etched forever in my mind. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the chilling story of the haunted mansion. The town of Ashford had always been quaint and picturesque, with its cobblestone streets and charming houses. But there was one house that stood apart from the rest, the old Ashford Manor. It was an imposing structure, surrounded by dense woods and shrouded in mystery. The manor had been abandoned for years, its windows boarded up and its gardens overgrown. It was a place whispered about in fearful tones, a place where no one dared to go. When journalist Lydia Grant arrived in Ashford, she had heard the rumors about Ashford Manor and its haunted reputation. Driven by a mix of professional curiosity and personal skepticism, she decided to investigate the manor herself. Armed with a camera and a flashlight, she made her way to the manor, determined to uncover the truth behind the chilling tales. The manor loomed before her, its Gothic architecture casting long shadows in the fading light. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the distant call of a raven. Lydia pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked ominously on its hinges. The interior of the manor was just as she had imagined, dusty, dark, and filled with an air of neglect. As she explored the grand foyer, Lydia noticed strange markings on the walls, symbols etched into the wood and stone. The symbols seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and Lydia felt a shiver run down her spine. She moved deeper into the manor, her flashlight revealing faded portraits of long-dead residents. The eyes of the portraits seemed to follow her, their gaze filled with a chilling emptiness. Lydia's exploration led her to the manor's basement, where she found a hidden door behind a stack of old crates. The door was locked, but Lydia managed to force it open with a crowbar. The room beyond was a small, dimly lit chamber, filled with old furniture and a large, ornate mirror. The mirror was covered in a thick layer of dust, and Lydia could barely make out her reflection. As she approached the mirror, the air grew colder, and Lydia's breath fogged up the glass. She wiped the dust away, revealing the mirror's surface. To her shock, the reflection in the mirror was not her own. Instead, she saw a ghostly figure. A woman in a tattered dress, her face twisted in a grimace of agony. Lydia stumbled back, her heart racing. She turned around to find the room empty, but the ghostly figure remained in the mirror, its eyes following her every movement. The figure raised a trembling hand, pointing toward the mirror's surface. Lydia approached cautiously, her curiosity overcoming her fear. As she touched the mirror, a jolt of icy energy shot through her, and the room seemed to warp and twist. The mirror's surface rippled, and Lydia found herself drawn into a vision of the past. She was standing in the same room, but it was filled with people, residents of the manor, all dressed in clothing from a bygone era. They were engaged in a frantic, frenzied activity, their faces contorted with fear and despair. In the center of the room stood a man in a dark suit, his face hidden in shadows. He was performing some sort of ritual, chanting in a language Lydia couldn't understand. The other residents were arranged in a circle around him, their eyes wide with terror. Lydia could feel the palpable sense of dread and desperation emanating from the scene. Suddenly, the vision shifted, and Lydia found herself in a different part of the manor, a dark, musty cellar filled with old crates and barrels. The man from the vision was there, along with several other figures, all gathered around a large, iron-bound chest. The man opened the chest, revealing a strange, glowing artifact. The artifact pulsed with a malevolent energy, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The vision ended abruptly, and Lydia was back in the small chamber with the mirror. Her heart pounded as she struggled to make sense of what she had seen. The mirror's surface was once again clear, and the ghostly figure had vanished. Lydia's mind raced with questions, but she knew she had to leave the manor before the darkness consumed her. As she made her way out, Lydia noticed that the manor seemed to be changing. The walls appeared to close in on her, and the corridors twisted and turned, disorienting her. The air was thick with an oppressive energy, and Lydia could hear faint whispers and distant screams. The manor seemed to come alive with a malevolent force, determined to keep her trapped within its walls. Finally, Lydia stumbled out into the night, her flashlight flickering and dying. The manor stood silent and foreboding behind her, its dark windows staring back at her like hollow eyes. She glanced at the glowing artifact she had found in the vision, now clutched in her hand. It was a small, intricately carved object, its surface covered in strange symbols. The next day, Lydia returned to Ashford Manor with a team of investigators. They found no evidence of the visions she had experienced or the ghostly figure in the mirror. The manor was still abandoned, and the whispers and screams had ceased. Lydia's account of the events was met with skepticism, and the artifact she had found was dismissed as a mere curiosity. But Lydia knew the truth. The manor's dark history and the malevolent force she had encountered were very real. The artifact was a key to a dark secret, one that had been buried for generations. As she left Ashford, Lydia could not shake the feeling that the manor's horrors were far from over. The echoes of the past and the chilling presence of the artifact would haunt her for the rest of her days. The storm hit Ravenwood Asylum with an unforgiving fury. The wind howled like a banshee through the crumbling halls, and the rain battered the windows with relentless force. The asylum had been abandoned for decades, left to rot and decay after a series of scandalous and unsolved disappearances. But tonight, the building seemed to awaken from its slumber, as if the storm had stirred something long forgotten. Detective Emma Carter stood at the gates of the asylum, her flashlight piercing the oppressive darkness. She had come here to investigate a series of mysterious disappearances in the nearby town of Ravensburg. Witnesses had reported strange noises and eerie sightings near the asylum, and Emma, driven by both duty and curiosity, was determined to uncover the truth. As she pushed open the rusty gate, a shiver ran down her spine. The asylum loomed before her, a Gothic structure with twisted spires and a sagging roof. The building was a monument to madness, its once proud facade now marred by time and neglect. The storm seemed to have an almost sentient quality, as if it were conspiring with the asylum's dark history. Emma made her way inside, her footsteps echoing ominously in the empty corridors. The scent of mildew and decay was overpowering, and the air was thick with a heavy silence. The walls were lined with faded, peeling wallpaper, and the floors were covered in layers of grime. She could almost hear the whispers of the asylum's tormented past, carried on the wind. Her flashlight beam danced across the walls, revealing long-forgotten patient records and abandoned medical equipment. Emma shuddered as she glanced at the rusted surgical instruments, relics of a time when the asylum's treatments were more about torture than healing. The first strange occurrence happened in the basement, where Emma found a hidden room. The door was ajar, and she could see faint flickers of light coming from within. As she stepped inside, the light source became clear, an old-fashioned lantern, its flame dancing in the darkness. The room was filled with strange symbols painted in blood-red ink on the walls. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood, and Emma felt a chill crawl up her spine. She turned to leave but was stopped in her tracks by a low, mournful wail. It seemed to come from deep within the asylum, echoing through the corridors. The sound was so heart-wrenching that it almost brought tears to her eyes. Emma followed the sound, her flashlight casting long shadows on the walls. The wail led her to a room at the end of a dark corridor. The door creaked open, revealing a room that had once been a patient's quarters. The room was eerily intact, with a bed made up neatly, and a single window covered by tattered curtains. On the bed lay a small, faded photograph of a young woman. Emma picked it up and stared at it, her heart pounding. The woman in the photograph had an expression of pure terror, her eyes wide and vacant. Suddenly, the room's temperature dropped, and Emma's breath came out in visible puffs. She turned around to find the room filling with a thick, dark mist. The mist swirled around her, coalescing into the shape of a ghostly figure. The figure was that of a woman in a tattered asylum gown, her face contorted in anguish. Her eyes locked with Emma's, and the wail grew louder, more desperate. Emma stumbled back, her flashlight flickering. She could feel the presence of something malevolent in the room, something that had been waiting for years to be set free. The ghostly figure reached out with a translucent hand, its fingers stretching toward Emma. In a panic, Emma bolted from the room, the mist swirling around her and the wail following her every step. As she raced through the asylum, the walls seemed to close in on her, the corridors twisting and turning as if the building itself were trying to trap her. Emma's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. She could hear the faint, ghostly whispers growing louder, and the wail was now a cacophony of tortured souls. Emma finally burst through the front doors, gasping for breath and drenched from the rain. The storm raged on, but the asylum seemed to be silent once more. She glanced back at the building, its dark silhouette looming against the stormy sky. The wail had stopped, but Emma knew that the asylum's horrors were far from over. The next day, Emma returned to the asylum with a team of investigators. They found the hidden room and the strange symbols, but the lantern and the blood-red paint were gone. There were no signs of the ghostly figure she had seen, only the lingering sense of dread that permeated the asylum. The investigation yielded no new clues, and the disappearances continued to baffle the town. Emma never returned to Ravenwood Asylum, but the memory of that night haunted her dreams. The wail of the tortured souls, the ghostly figure of the woman, and the oppressive darkness of the asylum remained with her, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked behind its crumbling walls. Join us next time as we delve into more tales of terror and suspense, exploring the darkest corners of the human psyche and the supernatural forces that seek to exploit our deepest fears. Until then, remember to keep the lights on and never venture into the shadows alone.